It was the beginning of fall, and I was working as a cashier at a store near my apartment. My shift ended at 9 in the night, and I would make deliveries before heading home. I enjoyed delivering at night because there were few people on the roads. I also had more orders to do during the night. I had just gotten back from my work and set up my app to do some deliveries. The first order was quick, and it took only 15 minutes. I waited for the next order to come. It was a good payout, and the delivery address was about 20 minutes from where I was. I went to the fast food restaurant to get the food for the client and then headed to their house. I come from a small town with large tracts of empty land. The main center is where my apartment and most of the restaurants are. Then there are farmlands about 10 minutes from the center, and the houses are much more spread out. Most of my deliveries come from the town area, but I occasionally get a delivery farther out into the farm area. I assumed I was delivering to a farmhouse because the destination was 20 minutes from town. However, the app said the address was in a small neighborhood area above a small highway. I wouldn't say I liked delivering in isolated farmlands during the nights, as it always creeped me out. I was happy I was delivering to a neighboring home. Once I exited the highway, I turned left and started moving toward the neighborhood. But I received a call from an unknown number. I almost declined it because I thought it was a scam. The caller called again a few seconds later. I accepted the call, thinking it was just a regular customer. I said hello, but there was no response, so I hung up. The same number called me a few minutes later. I answered, and the guy on the line said I had turned the wrong way. I asked what he meant because my app showed I was moving in the right direction. He said his address got messed up on the delivery app. I asked him for directions, and he directed me to his farmland. I have had clients telling me they gave the wrong address, so his case didn't bother me. I drove on a dark, isolated gravel road. I drove to the end, which led to a house. I parked outside a sign reading "For Sale" right in front of the house. The door was open, and I could see someone inside waving at me. I grabbed my bag and started making my way to the door. I got to the porch and started bringing the bag down. I saw the man again move down the hallway to the kitchen. He politely asked me to bring the food over to the kitchen counter. He quickly walked away as if he were in a rush, after turning on the sink in the kitchen. I stepped into the house. It was decorated with old furniture and accessories, and appeared utterly unused. I made my way down the hall and into the kitchen. I noticed the sink was still running, but the man was nowhere in sight. I felt chills down my body. I quickly set the bag on the kitchen counter and rushed out immediately. I could hear the man yell something at the front of the door as I left, but I couldn't hear what he said. I drove fast back to my apartment's parking lot. I checked my phone and saw multiple calls from that same number. I blocked it and opened the delivery app to add my deliveries for the night. I realized I had messages from customers through the app telling me I was in the wrong house. I was shocked when I realized that the man who called me wasn't a customer, and the house I was in was just a stranger's house. I couldn't understand how the man knew I was a delivery guy and how he saw my location. I worked as a food delivery driver during my first college years. I was mainly driving for Uber Eats or DoorDash. I hated talking to random people, and I didn't like strangers in my car either. I prefer working as a food delivery driver over a regular Uber driver. It was on Wednesday night, and I didn't have any classes in the morning, so I decided to make a few deliveries. I delivered 4 to 5 quick orders and was heading back to my hostel when an order popped up on my phone at around 1 in the morning. The address was about 12 miles away, but I decided to deliver after seeing how big the payout was. I had never seen a client offer such a huge offer before. I accepted the offer and headed to the restaurant. I went through the orders to ensure I picked the right stuff. I noticed the customer had ordered only 2 products, but they were tipping more than I had ever received before. It was unusual because the highest paying orders comprised bulk deliveries and expensive foods. The customer gave me a considerable tip by ordering just 2 products. I got the food and jumped in my car. Throughout my drive, I wondered why they gave such a huge tip. It was bizarre, but I thought it was a mistake or they were trying to be kind. It was my first time in this area, although it was only 12 miles from campus. It was lovely. It had gated communities and huge houses. The house I was delivering to wasn't gated. I looked at the surrounding elegant homes, and the huge tip made sense. The street was long, though. The customer texted me through the app as I was about to get to the house. When I pulled up, they reminded me to deliver the food to the correct address. I assumed the map probably showed up at their neighbor's house. When I arrived, I texted them their house's description, asking them to confirm whether it was the right house. They replied no, it wasn't, and I waited for them to describe their house to me. The person never answered, so I sent another text describing their neighbor's house. Again, they said no. I became upset with the guy and decided to call him, but he declined my call. I searched for the address on Google. As I checked the results, I noticed they pointed out the exact area I was in. I zoomed in on the map on my phone, and it showed that the address was for a spot between the 2 houses. Zooming further, I noticed a garage between the 2 houses. I moved my eyes between the 2 houses. Sure enough, there was a small garage-like structure between them. I got out of my car and headed over to the structure. It was a storage garage, probably meant for keeping old vehicles. I put the bag down on the garage door. A man came from the right side of the garage as I was taking the picture for the app. I looked over at him. He stood still, staring at me. He was creeping me out, and I said, "It's right here for you, sir," while pointing at the bag. I slowly started walking to my car when the man replied, telling me that wasn't where he wanted me to drop off the bag. I turned around and noticed he was still standing in the same spot. I asked him where he wanted me to drop the bag, now starting to get uneasy. The man said the door was over there, while pointing to the back of the garage. I decided not to follow him to the back. I stood there momentarily and told him, "Sorry, I wasn't going back there." I quickly went inside my car and started driving back to my hostel. I saw the man going behind the garage without taking the bag. I was shaking as I headed to the hostel. The whole situation freaked me out, and I wondered why the man wanted me to take the bag to the back of the garage instead of dropping it off at the main house. I worked as a pizza delivery driver during my late high school years. I usually worked night shifts after school, mostly on Mondays and Saturdays. It was a laid-back job, and I would drive, stand, or take orders on my phone most of the time. Some friends worked there too, so I always had someone to talk to. It was on a Friday night, and I had just returned from my last break. The pizza shop closes at 1 in the morning. We stop taking orders at midnight, then we start cleaning before closing down. It was around 11:30, and I decided to start cleaning. Only 2 other workmates and I were working that night. One was finishing his delivery, while the other went on break after I returned. The phone rang a few minutes after I had started cleaning. I picked it up and asked the person on the other end how to help them. An older man was on the line and asked whether we were still open for deliveries. I replied that we were not taking bulk orders. He ordered a regular pizza and gave me the address to deliver it. I packed the pizza and got into the car after about 15 minutes. The address was about 10 minutes away. I was about halfway there when I stopped behind another car that had stopped beside a stop sign. I waited for some seconds to see why the driver stopped for so long. I pressed the horn gently to alert the driver that I was right behind them and needed to move on. The car never moved, so I decided to pull around it. The driver, however, pressed on the gas and moved forward down the road. I was slightly annoyed, but thought the driver was probably doing that for fun or was drunk. I continued down the road, but noticed the same car. This time it had pulled over the side of the road with its headlights off. I began to get uncomfortable when passing them. I kept checking from the rear mirror for the rest of the journey to see whether they were following me. I finally pulled into the address's driveway, got the pizza, and went to the door. I waited momentarily before an old lady answered and asked me what I was doing at her place. I told her that I was there to deliver a pizza and recited the address I was given. She told me that nobody at her address had ordered any pizza and that there was no man who lived there with her. She told me that she had been alone the whole day. I could see she felt bad for me. I returned to the car with my pizza, assuming I got the wrong address. Bright headlights brightened my view from ahead as I was moving down the road. I knew a car was coming towards me. I quickly braked my car, waiting for the other vehicle to turn around or turn off the headlights, but the car wasn't moving at all. I waited to see what they would do next. We stood there for some time before the driver turned off the headlights. I looked ahead in the darkness to see where the car was. It wasn't there. I slowly started making my way down the road, being cautious in case the other car was following me. A few seconds later, I saw the car parked in the middle of the road. It was the same car I had seen standing beside the stop sign earlier. It must have passed me without knowing. A man got out of the driver's seat and started approaching me. He stopped halfway to my car and started waving at me as if he wanted me to pull over next to him. I freaked out but pretended to be comfortable. I pulled over next to the man. Surprisingly, the man never spoke to me when I stopped. He started moving around my car and then stopped behind it. I looked at him through the rear mirror to see what he was doing. I looked up in front of me and saw the doors of the car ahead swing open. 3 more men started splitting toward my vehicle. My adrenaline shot up, and I pressed the gas, almost knocking down one of the men as I moved down the road. I eventually got to the main road. There was no car on the road at that time. I could see from the rear mirror a vehicle making its way behind me. I was convinced they wouldn't stop following me. I drove faster and arrived safely at the shop. I explained to my friends what happened. They suggested I call the police. Some officers came to the shop and left once I recorded a statement with them. I received a call the next day informing me the 3 men had been arrested after trying to rob another vehicle later that night. I didn't know whether the 4th man was caught after escaping into the trees, but I'm grateful I escaped from them that night. From that night, I changed my work schedule and started working during the day.